I would like to welcome everyone, wherever you are in the world, to the second day of the BAMSA conference, Bridging Academia Policy and Practice, and in particular to this session on digital cheating and bridge. This is going to be, no doubt, an incredibly lively and engaging discussion, because bridge and cheating has roused passions over the last couple of months during lockdown and beyond. And cheating generally in sport, not just mind sport, is one that calls into question ideas around who gets punished, how they get caught, and also ideas around the particular image of the sport or mind sport in question. So no doubt, as a result, there are lots of contentions and challenges around how these debates play out, who gets to speak, the kinds of discussions that happen, and so on. So we would like to obviously stress that the questions that we have come up with this evening are to try and extend and push forward the debate a little bit more. And some of the presenters that you're going to hear shortly will bring perhaps a different academic gaze to understanding some of these issues that maybe have a very taken for granted way of looking at them. And also we'd like to highlight that though it has been obviously much discussion, particularly within the bridge world around cheating, this is still a minority of people who are engaging in forms of cheating and so on. But we really hope that this will prove to be a very lively and engaging discussion. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that as this session is going to be a panel discussion, attendees do not get to ask a question verbally, but through chat. So if you do have a question for any of our presenters or panel members, I cannot stress it strongly enough to please put it in chat and we will get to it and try and in the Q&A, hopefully they'll be answered. And if it isn't, apologies, but we are very stretched for time. So the session this evening will start off with some live presentations before we move on to a panel discussion. And before we do any of that, I would like to also highlight some of the fantastic pre-records that we have, particularly for this session, and that are available to watch online. And I think now, Sam, you have some polls that you want us to do.
Yeah. There's just a couple of quick polls. We're just going to sort of get your votes on a few issues. You should be able to see it in the center of your screen, or if not, if you look in the chat where the bubble is on your menu item, if you can find the chat. You won't all have it, but if you can find it and vote. We won't really discuss these answers. We'll just see what happens throughout the course of the conversations, and then maybe this will come back to these in the panel discussions. So can you vote, please?
So you might, as Sam said, not see it, but the question is it worse if a pro cheats as opposed to an experienced amateur? So if you can see that in your chat or in front of your screen, please do vote. That would be fantastic.
And it is anonymous, so.
We won't hunt you down for your answers afterwards.
Okay, and you might like to be considering why, if you've answered yes or no to that question. One thing you might be wondering about is why that's the case. So, okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, should the punishments be different for cheating in face-to-face bridge versus online? And again, you might like to muse to yourself why before you hear the academics presentations and then the panelists' presentations. And we have just one left. It's good to see. I think quite a lot of you do seem to have the polls, so that's good. And the last one. Were you able to see the results?
I currently can't see the results.
So this one is, should the lockdown climate make any difference when punishing a cheat or a cheater? And I suppose that's something to bear in mind, that for this side of the pond in the UK, we use the word cheat, and I think in the US you use the word cheater, but it's essentially the same thing. So can you see the results coming up?
Yes. So yes. So for that last question, there seems to be that the lockdown climate should not make a difference, is the strong opinion of the people who filled that out. And when it came to should the punishments be different to face to online. The response was 59% no and 21% yes. So again, people are very clear that whether it's online or face to face, the response should be the same. And the first question, is it worse if a pro cheats as opposed to an experienced amateur? Yes, 62%.
Okay, great. So we'll come back to these issues, I'm sure. And now over to Tihana, if you're ready to come
Yes,
on.
indeed. So now I'd like to ask our first live presenter, Tihana, to start her presentation. Tihana will have a 10-minute presentation followed by a 5-minute Q&A.
Hi, thank you for unmuting me. My presentation should upload really soon. I hope, at least. Okay, before it does, thank you, Samantha, for organizing the conference. Thank you for inviting us. I hope and I believe that it's a good way to start to deal with these issues that we all find difficult, to say at least. So my name is Tihana Brkačić, I'm a psychologist, and I also like to think of myself as a bridge player. I study and teach psychology of games and play for last 10 years because of bridge, of course. And in this conference, I'm academic part, but still I'm very much involved in these issues, and I feel that this presentation is really one of the most difficult I will ever deliver, because I know people and I will talk about some of my friends. I think it's really important that before we start to decide on what to do with cheating and who cheaters are, that we first understand what is dishonesty and how it works. This is the most simple model that's quite popular, and I've seen it at bridge winners discussions as people are trying to explain cheating using this model. You see, if you use this model, then person would think on what are the benefits of cheating, what is the likelihood that I might get caught, and what punishment might be if I get caught. So altogether, is it worth it or not? We may use this model to explain some very simple forms of cheating, like if you decide not to buy a train ticket, for example, because fine is only 50 euro and train ticket is 5 euro, and the likelihood of getting caught is very small. So maybe it's just reasonable not to buy ticket, but to try to avoid it by cheating. On the other hand, I also think that real criminals, ones that rob banks and do similar crimes, also use this rational model of cheating. But for us, the mortal ones, it usually does not work that well. So, although it is very convenient, many studies confirm that ordinary people really rarely engage in rational crime. Because we want to see ourselves as honest and honorable people, and we also want others to see us that way. So each of us really created our own moral system, but it is somewhat flexible. Let me ask you one question. For example, you are playing a tournament, and the opponent carelessly holds his cards. You actually have to make an effort not to see his cards. So you can think of it. I don't expect answers, but I guess some of us would peek into the cards. Maybe peek is not a good word, just look, because they're exposed. But if this opponent, for example, is a child, or if it's a person with some physical disability that makes holding cards harder, then we would definitely not do it. Almost none would. So these are the boundaries of our morality that are kind of flexible. We behave in accordance with our own moral schema because we get internal rewards and internal penalties. If, for example, we don't behave as we expect to behave an honorable man or woman, then we feel guilt, shame, and similar. There are several methods we use to protect our self-image. One of the very important is psychological distance between dishonest act and its consequences. For example, I'm sure you are aware of that people are much more reluctant to take a money bribe than the bribe in the form of, I don't know, some privilege or some, I don't know, vacation or things like that. The other important for our issue method is visual blindness. It's turning blind eye that happens spontaneously. We don't want to, but somehow we don't see that our husband is cheating on us. We don't see that our partner is self-kibitzing. It just happens. That's in human nature. Also, sometimes we are shifting guilt to those who discovered our dishonesty because of the methods they used. So my husband is cheating on me, but then I take his phone and go through his messages. And because of that, he accuses me that I found out using some other dishonest act. So we are the same for him. And finally, there is one good way to stronger our moral norms, and this is accessibility of moral standards. So if our moral standards are easily accessible, then it is less likely that we would conduct dishonest behavior. And here, you've probably seen this before, it's competitor commitment form that every competitor has to sign before European Championships. So from a psychological perspective, I think this is a very good way to stronger one's morality before the competition. It's like taking an oath for Olympic Games, or when you give a testimony in court, or similar rituals that are incorporated in human history. So for most of us who are honest people, this should work. This should bring out our morality. In my opinion, this is good, as I already said, but I think that the moral part should be even more explicit, stronger, and that people should focus on that. So during the lockdown, I think that we all know that, so I will not mention many things, but one thing that is really important is that many self-kibitzers said that they do it because it was easy. And I think that this is just rationalization, that this cannot be a motive. Because, for example, some crimes we do because some dishonest behavior we do because they are easy. For example, we may throw trash on a street instead of can, because we don't take an effort to walk. But definitely self-kibitzing is more difficult than not self-kibitzing. So it just does not work here. It's not easier. So because of that, self-kibitzing must be a rational act and the consequences of a decision. So what cheaters really did not expect was anti-cheating movement that started last summer. So we had really good technical and human resources and a lot of volunteers, and it turned out that internet games are far from invisible, which in my opinion cheaters thought they are, because internet is in general very anonymous and similar. So that's when the first confessions appeared. Public reactions varied from total outrage to compassion, as you know. And while there were very little or no response from the governing bodies, many ad hoc committees were formed, and people tried to deal it on national and international levels. One of the really negative consequences that has to be mentioned was general impression that game is completely uncertain, that everybody is suspicious, and everybody could be cheated. So these are the confessions that were made. As you can see, this exploded last summer. There were most comments on those confessions, and most articles on cheating whatsoever.
1 minute to Hannah.
Yes, cost benefit. You can see that all our cheaters denied external benefits from cheating, and they wanted to keep good self-concept, and they tried to create psychological distance from a live bridge. And just the last slide, I think that from psychological point of view, there are two main things that we should do. Keep on reminding players on their own moral standards and make psychological distance as difficult as possible. That is why, for example, European Championship this year is only qualifier. It's not, in my opinion, it's not very good way to promote it. And that's all. I just have one readings I may suggest you, because it's really good stuff on cheating. Thank you very much all.
Thank you to Hannah. Thank you very much. Can we all give Hannah a round of applause for a fascinating psychological insight into the reasons behind cheating? Hannah, you're a little dark. Do you think it's possible to turn on a light?
Yes. I'm a dark person. Wait.
You're disappearing in your screen. So fantastic. Thank you so much. So we have a couple of questions coming in. There's been some discussion in chat, but I have a couple to place to you before we have to swiftly move on to the next speaker. There's one from Alex Gibson, and they asked, are there any lessons that can be learned from online poker in preventing or identifying cheating?
I have no idea. I think that maybe Steve can answer the question, huh?
So do you then, I suppose, from a psychological standpoint, think that there is a difference between collusive cheating and individual cheating, or do you think?
I personally think that cheating is much more frequent in bridge than in poker, that it's much more controllable in poker. I know that there were some cheating scandals, but I think that you don't have real problems with that, not even close. Do you? Steve?
Yeah, I'm staying quiet for now.
He'll come in later in the panel. He'll definitely come in later to Hannah and give opinions. But your suggestion is that you think it's a bigger problem in bridge because of what? The way the game is set up.
I'm sure, yes, because it's partnership game. It must be bigger. Nobody would play poker for such big money if cheating was so easy as it was in bridge.
So that's an interesting point that perhaps can be picked up later in the panel, that you think part of the problem with the cheating is the fact that it's a partnership game.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. There have been other comments and questions in chat, Tiana, so do feel free to look through and answer or engage with as and when you feel like it. Don't go away, because I know you're going to come back to the panel at one point and have a chat as well. But again, thank you, and if everyone can thank Tiana again for her presentation. I would now like to move on to introducing Dr. Jordan McLean from BAMSA, who is going to present a 5 to 6 minute presentation on cheating. Jordan, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Miriam. I'm just uploading. Yeah, I'll be with you in just a moment.
No worries.
Thank you, Tiana, for such a wonderful presentation. That was so interesting.
Thanks.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's session on cheating. And thank you. I just want to start by saying thank you very much to Professor Samantha Punch for the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. I'm a research assistant at the University of Stirling, and the title of my presentation is Cheating at Digital Bridge, Revisiting Moral Panics. So starting with the laws and the spirit of the game. So Van Plu gives a historical perspective to the development of rules, which define the equipment, facilities, rules of play, eligibility, and regulatory rules across different sports. McPhee problematizes the way sport is defined by formalism or rules. The laws of the card game bridge are set out by the World Bridge Federation and are adopted by individual associations. Many of these have taken it upon themselves to supplement the laws with additional books, such as the Blue Book and the White Book. In contrast, or on the other hand, the spirit of the game, Masichalk and Owell define integrity as the application of generally accepted values and norms in daily practice. Burrell suggests that integrity, which refers to the obeying rules and not cheating, comes in two forms, self-discipline and gallantry. Christiansen uses the phrase the spirit of sport, which he refers to as fair play and sportsmanship. In relation to bridge, the spirit of the game is embodied by the Code of Ethics, which is produced by the WBF and individual associations. However, there's some differences in language, where the WBF adopt the use of integrity, whereas the EBU distinguish between good and bad behaviour. And the SBU uses better behaviour, for example. So what I would like just to ask if everyone in the chat could put in whether they think cheating is a personal trouble or a public issue. And I'm just going to start with the proviso that the extent to which a problem may be seen as individual or collective will vary not only across time and place, but also according to who is defining or interpreting it. If it's a collective issue, blame becomes you blame social structures, such as bridge organizations. If it's individualized, you blame the abuser, such as the player. It is the interaction between these which I am interested in that will help to reveal the power imbalances. So let's take a closer look at definitions of cheating. So first of all, we could look at corruption, which Brooks, Aleem and Button describe as bending the rules without breaking it. Gardner, Parry and Robinson go to the etymological roots of corruption, which is corruptus, which infers a state of decay or being rotten. Lowland also reinforces this intentional breaking of rules, of violations, typically involving deceitful behaviour. And Culbertson, he draws on the work of Sartre, who notes on the use of deception. And others have also mentioned some metaphors of cheating, such as cleanliness and war. And finally, thinking about a paradox, whilst cheating undermines the fair play, does it make for good sport? It's a contentious question. Types of cheating. So in the first picture at the top right, you'll see Lewis Hamilton, and what could be defined as an incident of sabotage, where his team, he could potentially blame his team in the World Championship against Nico Rosberg for a failure in his car. The second image of Cameron Bancroft with the Ashes, where he deliberately tampered with the ball. And then finally, looking at the last image, you could be looking at tanking or any of the last three, where you're looking at gambling, any issues related to money in sport to interfere with the result or the outcome of the game. So what I'm going to be looking at today is moral panics. And using the definition of cheating as a deliberate act of deceiving others, we can now try to contextualize some of the recent confessions of international level bridge players. We'll do this in relation to Stanley Cohen's conceptualization of moral panics, which is based on a fourfold typology: warning, impact, inventory, and reaction. So firstly, looking at warning, we look at the reactions to cheating at digital bridge and the effects of it: denial, disbelief, defense, or other, a lack of morality in relation to online bridge, not taking digital bridge seriously. Second, impact, the extensive media coverage of confessions and the demonstration of the cheats who are perceived as being folk devils. Thirdly, inventory involves exaggeration and distortion of the events, prediction of reoccurrence, and symbolization, where the word cheater becomes symbolic of a certain status, i.e. being deviant in relation to objects such as online bridge, and objects that become symbolic of the status, which refers to cheating at digital bridge, the title of the presentation. Finally, looking at reaction, which involves sensitizing to deviant groups, societal control of agents of control, such as bridge organizations, and a control culture, which are the new methods of control, such as revised laws. So renewing bridge as a mind sport. So what can we do about the moral panic of cheating at bridge? I put forward an affirmative thinking approach that is actively standing to the present while assessing its becoming and imagining new configurations. I propose we renew bridge as a mind sport, the very basis on which the game is premised upon, an affirmative ethics that recognizes that bridge do not simply adopt good behavior, but rather one has to become an ethical player. The affirmative player has an awareness of the limitations one faces when at the bridge table. And this also applies to bridge organizations. They have to confront the question of how much freedom of actions bridge players can endure. So here are some references that may be of relevance that I've spoken to through the presentation, and I'm sure the slides will be circulated, so please do feel free to look at these in your own time. Thank you for listening, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Jordan, and a huge round of applause for Jordan there. That was a fascinating look at and a different understanding of cheating from a more sociological perspective. So we've had two perspectives, one psychological, one sociological. You may be interested to know, Jordan, and I thought you might want to think a little bit or comment if you felt like it, that when you asked your question in chat about whether it was a personal trouble or a public issue, more people were focused on the personal, and perhaps unsurprisingly, I and Samantha, sociologists, were stressing perhaps more the collective. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, it's an interesting question, and I guess it was a bit of a trick question, because I think when I did look over to the chat, I think somebody had said both, and I guess we have to consider this the interplay, the interaction between them. If we look at one or the other, then we're missing the bigger picture, and I think it's important that we keep alert to the personal. If it's a personal issue, we're talking about if it's a minority of people. Public issue, we're looking at a collective in which it has become quite rife within bridge. So I guess we have to determine the balance of that. And if it does become a public issue, as which certainly there's been a number of cases that have occurred since the move to online bridge. It's about how do bridge organizations deal with this in a way that tries to lessen the effects it has as a moral panic, as what I've been discussing in this talk.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jordan, and beautifully to time, and a fantastic beginning of this panel session to really frame the subsequent debates that we're going to be having. So again, if everyone would thank Jordan and Tihana, I am now going to pass this part of the session over to Samantha Punch and the second panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam, and thanks to our academics. It's great to have both a psychological and sociological perspective. So we're now going to move on to our exciting panel of players and also representing bridge organisations. So I'm just going to introduce them very briefly, but then they're going to speak a little bit more, each of them, about their role in relation to cheating and what their particular interest is. And then we have 5 questions that we're going to pose to them. They're each going to say their views, and we hope that we get a bit of a dialogue going between the panel. And that will probably go on. This panel discussion, in-depth discussion, will probably go on for about an hour. It may not go on quite the full hour. Then I propose we have a short break. And then we come back for the last half an hour with the open Q&A. So keep putting your questions in the chat throughout. The panelists will also maybe respond to some of your questions. And the more that the panelists can also type some responses, that's great, because we'll capture it all in the report afterwards. We might not get to answer all the questions verbally or even written today, but we will put them all together in the report and have some extra commentary afterwards. So I'm delighted to say that we have a great mix of people on the panel. We have Eric Laurent representing the World Bridge Federation Investigation Committee. We have Jan Kamras, the president of the European Bridge League. We have Boje Broglund, the world champion bridge player from Norway, also known popularly on Bridge Winners as the Sheriff, but I don't know whether he likes the term, the Sheriff. So I'd be interested, Boje, when you speak, as to what you think about the label you've been given and where it actually came from. Who gave you the label in the first place? And then we have Steve Weinstein, who's also a world champion bridge player. He's also a key partner in Bridge Winners, and I'm sure Bridge Winners is going to keep coming up in the discussion. And he's also a professional poker player, and we've already had a question in relation to poker, and so hopefully he can shed some light on the similarities or differences between bridge and poker. So initially we'll have a discussion with the 4 of them, and then at certain times we will bring back academics to Hannah and Jordan to comment as required. So Eric, if you can go first, just to say a bit more.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Well, as you heard, my name is Eric Laurent. I'm Dutch, and Jan Kamras always start laughing when I say I'm Dutch, because nobody's perfect, you know. I started to play bridge at the end of the 70s. I wanted to become a professional player, but very soon it showed I was not good enough, not talented enough. So I became an administrator and non-playing captain of the team. I served the board of the Dutch Federation for 9 years. I'm in my 3rd term for the EBL, next year elections. I'm also in my 1st term for the WBF. And since a couple of years, in 2015, when the first wave of cheating showed up, Jan and me were initiators of the EBL Investigation Committee. That's where my crime-fighting career started. A few years later, I became a member of the ACBL Anti-Cheating Committee. And now, since half a year, I am part of the WBF Investigation Committee. So a big part of my life is dealing with cheating in bridge. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Jan? You're muted, Jan. We can collect points to see how many times everyone gets muted.
It took me 3 times to unmute myself. That's something about me, I guess. So hi, everybody. As Eric has already mentioned, Eric and I, together with partly Jean-Paul Meyer, in 2015-2016, we were heavily involved in investigating and then later on also prosecuting alleged cheaters originating from the 2014 European Team Championships. And I would say it's Eric and I, we spent, I think, the best part of 2 years working on this, setting up the protocols, procedures for investigating and then trying to prosecute. And, you know, it was a bit of it was a work in progress. We had no experience to fall back on. We really had to try to invent things as best we could as we went along. And, you know, nothing was perfect probably, but I think at least we had a very how should I put it? It was due process, if you accept the term. It was very, very thorough investigations, we felt, and resulted in different outcomes. But anyway, after that, what I have been trying to do is to modify the laws, the bridge laws, because one case that we lost, it was clear that our laws are not ideally suited to handle these type of situations. So we're still working on this. I mean, we have some drafts pretty close to being ready within the WBF, and so I hope we can get that done very, very soon. And again, we're pushing together with Eric for getting Eric as the chairman of the WBF investigation committee, which I think is crucial because I believe the playing community respects Eric a lot. And with him as the chairman of the IC, I think players can be fairly confident that, you know, it's going to be pursued very, very aggressively. So that's about it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jan. Boya?
Hi, Sam. I'm Boya Brugland, 48 years old from Norway. I learned bridge when I was 8 years old from my grandparents, and I really have loved the game ever since. I played for Norway for 25 years, and I played professionally for 20 years. I have to say that for the first 25 years of my bridge life, cheating wasn't really on my radar. I experienced very, very little when playing in Norway, and also playing in international competitions. I hardly ever felt cheated or anything. So I really felt that bridge was a clean game. This, I would say, changed maybe around 2005 with the Ratti-Lanzarote incident, and also like from 2010 onwards, there was much more talk about bridge, talk about cheating. So then, when I was, as you mentioned, Sam, that I was known as the sheriff, which wasn't really a name that I liked that much. I think it was Jeff Mextrot that brought that up. For me, I would say I was just a very concerned bridge player that could see and realized that there were a lot of cheating in bridge, which I hadn't realized before. I'd been suspicious, and I heard other people being very suspicious. So it was a very difficult situation because I also teamed up with these players that then became known as cheaters. So this happened in 2015, the big first cheating scandal where I was very active. And then last year, it was the 16th of June, Short Brink, that he was organizing one of the new online events that had become very popular. He called me, and he called a lot of other bridge players and asked to help him, because he said that it's clear now there is so much cheating in online bridge. So this was the start of what was later known as CAT, the Credential Advisory Team, that tried to help these tournaments in having clean games. Thanks.
Okay, great, excellent. Just quickly, is CAT still in existence?
Well, it's been not much happening, I think, for the last, say, half a year, maybe maybe a little bit more than last 8 months. Very, very little, I think, has happened with CAT. It was trying to help these tournaments, and also these where we probably get back to like this legal hazard that you're in if you're trying to do something. That also, I guess, the bridge federations can say more about.
That's maybe a good sign if it hasn't been very busy in the last few months. So anyway, Steve, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, I'm Steve Weinstein. I play bridge on the Nickel team, and can't wait to get back to live bridge, or in-person real bridge, as I would call it. I've been involved since 2015, a little bit before that, but since 2015, talking to Boya Brogland more than I talked to my wife in 2015. And, you know, I had something to do, whether it was investigating or receiving a confession or testifying or exposing most of the major cheating cases since 2015. I think that the biggest thing that needs to be done, and Tiana touched on it much better than I could, is there has to be just this huge disincentive to cheat. The risk reward has to be so great that the punishment for getting caught is so high that people will be like, well, this is just insane for me to cheat. And that's what I really think is the direction we have to go. Thanks.
Okay, great. So the first question that we're posing to the panel is, what is the impact of cheating on bridge as a game or as a mind sport? So for this, we'll start with Jan.
I'm still unmuted, I hope. Okay. It's a little bit mixed feeling. It's intuitive to just say that, oh, it's horrible for the image of, excuse me, of bridge. But I think we have to distinguish between internal and external. Internally, we tend to think, we have always thought, like Boye said, we've always thought that, oh, this is honorable people playing an honest game, and nobody thought of cheating. Against that, you know, coffee housing, let's face it, the amount of cheating taking place at the bridge table 50, 60 years ago, and maybe 40 years ago as well, I believe is much more than it is now. Of course, there were no screens, there were no bidding boxes, etc., etc. But I think this image which we try to ascribe to ourselves is maybe a little bit wishful thinking. Externally, you know, when the cheating scandals broke and there were articles, suddenly bridge was mentioned in I can't remember which big magazine it was. I was interviewed, other people were interviewed, and non-bridge players who have previously probably thought of bridge as, oh, this is old men and women sitting smoking cigars and drinking and having fun at the card game. They might have thought, oh, wait a minute, this must be a serious mind sport, maybe, because it seems to be worthwhile to cheat, and it's a big deal, etc., etc. So yes, maybe it's more of a matter of bridge having become more like any other sport. I'm watching the European Football Championships right now, for example. Every match I see, you have 22 players on the field. Out of those 22 players, I would say on average 4, 5, 6 are cheating. Okay, they get a little touch on the shoulder, and then they fall all over themselves, holding their face to the ground, etc., etc. We have, of course, the most famous case, Maradona and the hand of God. So I think that in a lot of sports there is maybe at least as much cheating as there is in bridge. So maybe we have to put things in a little bit of perspective, and maybe we're just not so different from any other activity.
Okay, thanks, Jan. Boya?
Yeah, I think one of the problems with bridge is that it has a huge impact on the game. You can see that some other sports, you could say, oh, their cheating is, yeah, maybe it helps you a bit. But in bridge, like, cheating is huge. I would say that any good player that would really put their mind to cheating could become a world-class player. And every top-level player could become unbeatable if they really put their mind on cheating. So this is, I think, some of the problem with bridge, that it has such a huge impact. You can see, I always thought about cheating in bridge as doping. This is what I said back in 2015. Cheating is really some form of doping, but it's just so highly effective, cheating in bridge. And this, I think, is a problem. That's why we can't tolerate, and we have to try and do something, because it totally destroys the competition at the top, and also, of course, lower down in clubs and stuff. If you have people cheating in the clubs, and it just ruins the competition, which I think is bad, and especially bad for bridge.
And Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of torn between, like, I don't think of it as doping. I think of it as a much greater offense. You know, doping to me is like the steroid scandal in baseball. It became just an epidemic, and I wouldn't say it's the same as looking at all the hands or collusively cheating with your partner. I think that, you know, online bridge did make it seem less of a high consequence to people, and I think that's why we saw some reasonable people that we would have never expected to be cheaters to get involved in it. And, you know, it's certainly very sad, but I just think that it's, as Boya said, the information that's attained through cheating and bridge is just so great and it makes the game virtually unplayable and certainly not worth dedicating one's life to. So we have an obligation to do something to fix that.
Yeah, and Eric?
Yeah, well, in addition to that, yes, I think so. For particularly the elite players have an obligation to show how the game should be played. They are the example for many other players. I've had my heroes 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now I have a different opinion. But these guys, they should be the real example for the other people. And also, you know, if one player or one person cheats at the table, directly he influences the results of hundreds of other people on other tables, because your score is not set at your table. In fact, it is set at all the other tables together. So the impact is directly huge and completely different than, for instance, the chess face-to-face play or whatever. So yes, it has to start with education and example roles.
I mean, some of you already touched on this in your answer, but the second question was, what are the implications to the image of Bridge? And I suppose if you've already touched on this, the other question would be, can we ever get a clean game? Is that possible to have no cheating at all levels? So back to Jan.
No. Meaning, I don't think that we will ever be able to completely avoid cheating. It doesn't matter what safety measures we take in face-to-face tournaments or online or whatever, unless we spend millions and millions and millions on God knows what measures, we will not totally eradicate cheaters. There will always be a few that manage. And, you know, again, like in other sports, look at golf or others, which was really supposed to be a gentleman or gentlewoman's game where you actually are the judge of yourself. You know, you're your own judge. There is cheating. It's possible to cheat there as well, and a few people will do. But if you have 1 million people, or let's say 10,000 people playing serious competitive bridge, you have a couple of cheaters there. It's horrible, but I don't think it's possible to avoid completely. I'm maybe too much of a pessimist, but I'll do my best to fight it.
And Boya, and it'd be interesting as well, Boya, to hear whether you feel you've got a clean game in the WBT, the World Bridge Tour at the moment.
Yeah, I'll respond to that too, but I agree with you. I think it's impossible to totally get rid of cheating. It's just part of, I would say, any competitive game where where you have a chance to do something, to really to get an edge by not following the rules. It will always happen, but I think it's the limit. We have to try just and limit it. It's depending on the degree, and also the thing with is the cure maybe sometimes worse than the disease. You see how much will we change the game? How much will we be willing to change the game in order to get less cheating? I'm not so sure that that's a good payoff for us. And the other things, when you come to the World Bridge Tour that you asked about, Samantha, that's something that we started. That I started with together with Thomas Kjeldsen, another Norwegian that also was involved back in 2015 when the cheating scandal then. This is something we tried to find like a fun and fair place to play bridge, and we definitely feel that we have done something positive, and that there's less cheating in our events than events that we played in the past. But I think we would be kidding ourselves if we thought that just because you start something new and really focus on these things that you can get rid of all of it. But we think it has been pretty good, and we hope that it will become maybe even better.
Okay, and Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I just totally agree with these guys. It's never going to be cheat-proof or cheatless. You know, what we saw in 2015 is we caught some pretty relatively easy people to catch, and I think it discouraged other people. And after, in 2019 with the online stuff, once people realized actually how simple it was to look over what they're doing and put it together, and it decreased it a lot. But I don't think that we'll ever get to the point that there'll never be cheating. It's as Boya said, the game, it's people cheat and things, and it comes back to, once again, just disincentive.
And Eric, I'm going to ask you, but I don't know, maybe put you on the spot a bit. Jan talked about the difference between the internal and external image of Bridge, and what it does to the game, either inside or from the reputation point of view, from people looking in from outside. Do you think there's a difference between the damage it does inside to the image of Bridge, inside the Bridge world versus Bridge world?
Well, they say never waste a full crisis, and for the external world, it can be very good for us to show that we are handling this cancer in a way that helps for the future. We have not done a great job in the past for WBF, European Bridge League, whatever, all other organizations. But if we show we take it seriously now and we fight and we are ready to change the laws, as Jan was talking about, and again, this example behavior of our elite players. You know, when you see a golf course, Jan mentioned golf, I think it was Jan. The elite players in golf, they have an example role and they play it very often very nice. They are their own directors, you know. They call the director when they make a mistake. I know some bridge players who would be able to do that or who have done it, but not that much. And this is what I mean. We can do much more on this.
Okay. Great. Do any of you want to come in on any of this before we move on to our next question? Is there at this sort of point you can kind of either dive in or you can raise your hand electronically, or if I can see you, sort of wave.
Sam, a principal question. There are several questions for me and Eric in the chat box, but it's difficult to go back and forth and have time to answer them. You know, is it possible that we just once in a while answer them live here instead of going in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, if you see something that you would particularly like to pick up on, and if it's relevant to what we're talking about, yeah, absolutely. If it's mentioning a different thing, we come back to it in the open Q&A. But yeah, if it's relevant, let's go for it now.
But we also can answer those later, no?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll answer it later then.
Okay, we'll continue on for now, because I think, this question is probably linked to what we've been talking about. And both the presentations, particularly to Hannah's, talked about what happened on what was revealed on Bridge Winners. So I suppose the question is, what is the role of Bridge Winners in public discussion and confessions? So we'll start with you, Steve, as you are Mr. Bridge Winners.
Just how I always wanted to be known as in my life. Thanks. Yeah, I think that Bridge Winners has played an important role, will continue, and it's one of accountability. I think that, you know, we view ourselves as journalists. Well, you know, I'm sure that's laughable to real journalists, but we try hard to research and to put out fair and reasonable arguments. And I think that we can hold the federations accountable, whether it's the WBF, the EBL, the ACBL, the USBF, etc. And I think we can hold the players accountable, because as long as things aren't going the way they're supposed to go and progressing, we always have a way to present a very fair argument as to why we think things should be going that way. And ideally, you know, Bridge Winners doesn't want to publish cheating allegations or do anything other than let the federations handle it. And certainly in 2015, it needed to be jump-started. And in 2019, it felt like it really needed some fixing too. But I'm hoping that Bridge Winners can step away from that and just let Eric and etc. do their jobs the way that we know they're capable of doing. And Rob Gordon, and, you know, just continue to handle it.
So in your view, it's kind of, you've kind of done your bit now, and now it's kind of over to the organizations. Am I interpreting that right?
I don't think you could ever be done. I think that you always have to have a watchful eye and be there if needed. But we would certainly prefer that the organizations handle it than we do.
Okay, and Boya?
No, it's much of the same that Steve says. That I think it was so good to have that arena. I think if you go back to 2015, and also if you look last year, what happened? I think if you hadn't had that kind of arena or place for expressing all of the things and views on these things, and also the facts that came out of it, I think that it could have seen a lot more different. Like the whole situation, I think, could have been a lot worse in my view. I think it was really needed to have some sort of, and at that time it was Bridge Winners really, and that's been the platform you have to really get out with something in bridge. I think if you just do it through the organizations, that's something that I felt back in. I will mention that even if Jan is here on the stand, I'll mention this. But I called Jan back in 2015 after, when I was convinced that was at that time was Fisher and Schwartz. I was convinced that they were cheating, and I called Jan, and it just sounded from his response, and he was the one that I trusted the most when it came to the bridge officials. But just his response, it just seemed like this will take a long time. And I think if you hadn't had bridge winners, for example, I think this could have taken a lot longer time. And I don't think all of these, which I think is good things, that would have happened. So that's a really good thing. I think that you have that kind of opportunity that you can actually get out with your views and spread it in a way to the bridge public, rather than you have to take everything through the organizations, which I think in the past have been a bit too passive when it comes to cheating.
Okay, we've got Eric and Jan left to comment on this question. So maybe you can also think about the role of the confessions and how you see the different online confessions, and what you think also about the players who've been accused but not confessed, and these kinds of issues as well. We can bring in the kind of confessional aspect of it, as well as the public discussion and the public role of bridge winners. So Eric?
Yeah, but first, the bridge winner site, call it social media or whatever. The WBF EBL websites, they are kind of an institutional website. We bring official news, results of matches, agendas, master points. So it's a very factual site, and it's designed for that. And as you can see, a site like Bridge Winners is totally different in concept, in design, in how it works. And I think those guys have seen there was really a demand for such a site, and probably WBF and EBL would never have been able to bring up such an enormous community now. And I don't think we need to. I mean, if we have those institutional sites, it's okay. And personally, I'm very happy with a site like Bridge Winners or the other ones. You also have the Neapolitan, all those sites. I'm a frequent visitor of those sites just to watch if something happening, if there's some news, this kind of interesting things that develop. So they play an important role in that.
Okay, and Jan?
I remember, Boye, very well. Actually, we had a 2-hour phone conversation, and the way I remember it, the gist was that I said, basically, come with an official complaint to and report it to whatever authority it has to be reported to. This is one of the things that I've had a problem with for a long time, and I also know the background to it, because in the past, players felt that, oh, these organizations anyway don't do anything, so what's the point in reporting it? I also remember saying that I expect it not to be such a quick process, because if you follow due process and do it properly, it will not go as quickly as the cat stuff did. And anyway, that's the past. Bridge winners. I fully agree with Eric on the general usefulness of media, whether social or not social, in this respect. But I have to, as usual, I have to be the odd man out. What I hope for the future, I understand that in the summer and autumn of last year, when frankly the WBF and the EBL, we said specifically that after researching everything in our statutes and legalities, talking to lawyers, it was determined that we did not have jurisdiction to handle cases which involved a private organization and not an event which was organized by us or any of our NBO bodies. And this is why we of course didn't like that. And the WBF executive during the autumn of last year worked really quite a lot on changing the disciplinary code, etc., which was changed effective, I think, 28th of November. And now the situation is different. Now the WBF has an investigation committee a credible one with a more than credible chairman in Eric. And the problem is going to be that if in the future allegations are presented first, whether it's Bridge Winners, Neapolitan Club, or any other media, then we have a very, very problematic case, both to investigate and to prosecute in the WBF investigation committee, because you're going to have a lot of people who are already going to be disqualified for having expressed opinions. You're going to have, you're going to have confirmation bias. You're going to have all kinds of problems. So I really, really hope that all players in the future, you have a suspect pair or individual, file a formal report to the WBF investigation committee, and who will then take it from there. And by the way, coming to CAT, which is also an integral part of this, what I hope is, and I know that Eric has tried to get this together, all these people, Boye, like CAT has been using and whoever has been involved, I would like all of those to be available to the WBF IC, to be analysts in cases which are being investigated. And then on an anonymous basis, one not knowing who the other analysts are, etc., etc., to have a due process. But we really, the efforts that these people have put in are enormous. You understand? I mean, it's hundreds, if not thousands of hours have been spent by you guys in investigating these allegations. And we don't want to waste that resource, but we cannot have two parallel judicial systems, in my opinion. So I really hope that you will give it a try, trust Eric and the new process, and then, if you're still not happy, then let's go back to the street, to the justice of the jungle again.
Yeah, Boye, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I think this sounds good. What Jan says, and I think he has the best intention. I just think for the players, it was like so frustrating for so many years that a lot of people sensed much more than I did that what was happening and how bad it was and how like impossible it became to win tournaments when cheaters played in it. So I think it was the frustration, and also the thing, of course, it's frustrating. At least I'm frustrated by that the federation's organization, that they couldn't do more with the online cheating that happened last year. And of course, I can see the reason, there are legal reasons for it, but it's a lot of frustration, I think, with the players that the organization haven't done more in the past and weren't able to do so much about what happened last year. So hopefully it will be better for the future, absolutely. But I think there's a lot of frustration that built up here for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a very relevant question that's just come in from Alex Gibson, and maybe Steve, maybe you might like to pick up on this, because again, how do you respond to what Jan's just said? And the question is, the key question is, says Alex, do you trust the WBF, the EBL, the ACBL, etc. now? Now there is the ability and desire to deal with cheating. Do you trust them?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I don't think that you're the odd man out. I think that we're all in agreement that things have to be changed, and we're working towards change, and people like Boye and myself would love nothing more than to have it handled by the WBF, etc. But to get to Alex's question, I do not trust the organizations at all. There are people in the organizations I have a great deal of respect for, like Eric Laurent or Jan Kamras or Rob Gordon. The organization with those letters, I don't feel like history has shown them to do a good job, to be proactive, so no, the organization I don't trust. I'm putting my faith in certain individuals, and I really hope that it comes through.
Can you say a bit more about that? What do you mean by the organization?
You take these letters, the WBF, the EBL, the ACBL, etc., and you put them together, and then you have presidents of it, whether it's the president of the blah, 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 blah. And then you have these group, sort of like a group think, and there's not really that much individual accountability. It's sort of like when I worked at Bear Wagner. It felt to me like it was very difficult for individuals to try to stand out. Now, that was typically people like trading, etc., and putting on positions. Well, is it great to be the one standing out, making a stink about somebody who's on panel, who's on WBF committees that perhaps has been accused of cheating? I don't think that it really is, and I think that the organization itself finds it easier to not get that involved. But I do think individuals like Eric Laurent will plow through that and get involved.
Okay, we'll hear from Eric just in a moment. Just also to give the heads up that we'll also be bringing in Hannah and then Jordan, resident academics, to give their view on these issues. But Eric, first, how do you respond to this?
Well, okay, a few things. The statutes and rules and regulations of the organizations were written when even internet didn't exist. So it's not that strange that we needed some time, a lot of time, maybe too much, I agree, to change those things. Then secondly, we were used to fight and look for collusive cheating, because as a declarer cheating, we couldn't imagine this could happening. Okay, you can peek in another hand or maybe like that, but we were not used at all or ready for this new phenomena. Self-kibbing, I mean, per definition, cheating was something that you were doing collusive with your partner. And now, thanks to the online bridge, you could decide to cheat yourself without even your partner knowing about it. A totally new thing we were looking at. Thirdly, and now we have so much data. I mean, his name already was mentioned. Nicholas Hammond has millions, hundreds of millions of boards available, with every trick to trick and every bidding and so on. We didn't have, and we don't have this information for face-to-face bridge. So now we are in a position that we are much more equipped with data to look at and to investigate. I mean, some other panel members said hundreds or thousands of hours on a case. This is true. I know 2 or 3 cases that have cost so much time. There were tens of cases where in 2019, 2020, where self-kibitzing and even collusive cheating popped up. However on earth can we spend hundreds or thousands of hours per case? Impossible. It's really impossible. And we can do 1 or 2, maybe for very elite players, whatever, because we think they are held to the highest standards available. But we have to find a way to deal with this cheating without that many manual intervention. And as Jan said, Jan is working for 2 years now on the new laws on this. And there we will have a look at statistics and how to use them, how to bring them in the law. Look at other mind sports. Look at what chess is doing or what backgammon is doing. They put in robots to play, and if the play is too much same like the robot would have played, and this is happening too many times, you're guilty. And they accept this thing. I mean, there are many, no, not many, there are innocent people in our jails. But still, in most countries, we accept the juridic system that sends people to jail. For bridge, it seems to be that we need 100% certainty to say you are a cheater. And we will never achieve that, not with statistics and not even with polls or whatever. Unless a confession, we will never have this 100%. So we have to deal with this, and we have to find a better way. And we have been naive too long. I remember as a captain, some of my peers said, I never want to play against these and these. Now they are convicted cheaters. But at that time I thought, you're afraid for them. They are too good for you. But they already felt at that time they were being cheated. And now we know this is real world and it will not go away. Okay, the World Bridge Tour is, I'm convinced, much cleaner than the first online tournaments of 19 and 20. I'm convinced. I'm watching and we are seeing and I hear about statistics and everything is much better. But a new time, a new era, and we will have again, as we concluded, new cheats. So we have to work around this. This is not a thing we can do easily with investing hundreds of hours. And we have hundreds of volunteers who are ready to help us. And, I have no problem in sending out an email to 100 people and I get 60, 70 positive answers within 24 hours. I'm ready to help. But still, that doesn't work. It's not enough.
Okay, great. Hannah, would you like to come in at this point? Eric, you can maybe put your hand down, otherwise I'll keep asking you more questions.
Here I am. I forgot the microphone. Yes, I think the public discussion on bridge winners or any other side, for that matter, is good. I think that it's important that some issues are discussed, that we can see the opinion of many people, but I also think that it could be kind of dangerous, because in those public discussions, people very often separate like in two extremes, and then you have this fight against fight of one group against the other, and people create enemies while they were maybe friends or people in the same club or something like that, and they are not really engaged. They just became engaged because of the certain topic they disagree on. So I think it's okay. I think that discussions should be moderated somehow by someone, and I would really see, not as a moderator but as a commenter, some official persons also, because it's mostly players, some top players, some weaker players, some club players, but basically rarely anyone from WBF, EBL, and this organization comments like he or she is a part of the society. I think that's good.
That's interesting there. I mean, you bring up the interpersonal element, and some others comments have been coming into the chat around that. And I just wondered, I mean, all of you have been so invested in terms of what you've done to fight cheating. How has the personal impact been, the personal impact on you and your lives, and the interpersonal impact that Tihan has just been speaking about? Given that it's just come up, is there any comments you want to make on that?
Well, for me, it's clear I cannot watch at the table anymore looking for a nice game, because everybody will see and speak and say, ah, he's watching that pair or this pair, you know, this changed my life, or life kibitzing is over.
That's a shame. Did someone have their hand up? Did someone else have their hand up just now? No?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, Steve.
I think it's interesting because amongst people that cheat and their friends and stuff, I think I'm catching Bobby Levin as a less popular and more heated bridge player, which I didn't think was going to happen in my partnership in my lifetime, but I'm getting closer to being more heated than Bobby.
I'm sure he'll appreciate you for saying that. Anybody else want to comment on that, and how that might be when we go back to face-to-face bridge, that those interpersonal challenges that might happen given what's gone on this past year or so?
Yes.
Sorry, Jordan, we will come to you in a moment.
I think it's a very interesting point, because there's going to be a big problem when we're back to live bridge also. People are going to look at each other differently. Some have you know, some who have confessed, some have not confessed, some have been accused, some have been processed by some independent process rather than street justice. Maybe they've been declared guilty, maybe not. They get a sanction. What happens, you know, among the top playing community? I shouldn't say that all of them are friends, but you are at least good acquaintances, and some considering even good friends. And I believe probably, whether they have been guilty or not, there are a lot of friendships, interpersonal relations, which will be different, unfortunately. But I don't know what one can do about that. That's life.
Yeah, Okay, I mean, you may want to pick up on some of this later, but there's clearly like personal costs and interpersonal costs and social costs. But we've also had comments coming in asking about the economic costs. So I don't know whether either Jan or Eric or the other two could comment on the economic costs. How much has been? I can't remember what the exact wording was of the question, but what is from Kiat, what percentage of revenue at any of the big organizations is typically spent on anti-cheating activities, whether that's an IBO, an international organization, or an MBO?
Okay, well, first of all, most of the work we do is with volunteers, and they are not getting paid at all. We are not getting paid, we are volunteers, everybody involved is volunteers. But then, as an official body, where you have rules and legislation, we have to fulfill all the demands about that. We have to hire legal expertise. And sometimes legal expertise gives an advice to hire other expertise. And those external people, they are very expensive. I don't think it's a secret that we spend hundreds of thousands of euros on a case like Fantoni Nunez and other cases like that. And it's very expensive. We are lucky we have an insurance for that. But we pay every year a huge amount for insurance, and this money we also could have spent on Bridge itself. But it's our responsibility, it's our role, we have to do it, and without the volunteers it would be undoable at all.
Okay, maybe he's been waiting patiently, so maybe now we should go to Jordan. And Jordan, another of the questions I think that came in from Kiat was, I don't know, I know you've done a lot of looking at cheating in other sports, and his question was, are there any other sports that have had the kind of example of, say, Boya or Steve, where players have kind of led the initiative instead of the authorities in terms of sort of making the change for the future in terms of dealing with cheating? Have our other sports had that kind of thing where individuals or groups of individuals have taken control rather than authorities? You may not be able to answer that, or you may want to talk in general about what you've read about other sports compared to bridge.
Yes, no, thank you very much for the question, Kiat. It's very, very fascinating, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussions that's been had. I think the example of sport that I could give would probably be perhaps cycling, especially looking at around the key kind of around Lance Armstrong in particular. There was a very interesting paper that I read in which, who then do you allocate all of those championships that Lance Armstrong won? And if you go down the list, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, they were all considered to be doping, as well as Lance. So it brings up a very interesting question. And I think in terms of thinking around the discussions that were had, perhaps whistleblowers, they play an integral part within trying to detect cheaters within bridge, the game of bridge. So I think there needs to be a space for that. But how are they protected? How do we ensure confidentiality of whistleblowers who want to come forward, especially when at the bridge table it's based on, you can't call players out as being cheaters at the table. And then thinking around the language that we've used is another point in terms of how do we differentiate between cheating and maybe professional fouls, and that was discussed in relation to such as the European Championships, where cheating is part of sport, and we've recognized that in terms of thinking around that we have to learn to live with it, very much like COVID, where we just have to learn to live with the virus for the course now, over the course now. And then finally, thinking around the new laws and the legality of it. Perhaps it's are we still catching up? Because in the sense of that, because digital bridge is so new, we're still catching up with how we can try to anticipate what the new laws will be and how we can regulate bridge. So I think moving in, how can we learn from other sports, coming back to this central question, is that yes, we can learn from other sports in terms of the governance structures that they have in place, but Bridge itself is its own unique, it's sui generis, and so that will present its own unique challenges that we have to account for, that will be distinct from other sports.
Thanks, Jordan. Jan, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, a comment on whistleblowers and anonymity. Maybe Eric should respond to this actually rather than I, but I think that is part of the whole process. If in order to avoid the public eye necessarily, and whether it's whatever media it is, if the whistleblower contacts whichever, whether it's an NBO event, you contact whatever NBO facility there is. If there is none, you contact the WBF-IC, and the WBF-IC guarantees anonymity. The whole concept of the new IC is that Eric and a very small group are the administrators. They are the only ones who will know both who the accuser was and who the accused are. Then they will start the investigation if they find prima facie evidence, and give hands anonymously out to analysts. So actually this process helps whistleblowers actually.
Yeah, although I have to admit that many smoking gun hands, they are being discussed everywhere on the fora, and even if you anonymize the players, sometimes they are known and the hands are recognized, and so it's very difficult to stay unbiased for 100%.
That's true.
Okay, well, I mean, I think there we've actually covered quite a lot of our next question, which was question 4, which was around what do you see as the roles of international and national organizations, and what's the difference between those and perhaps these newer digital organizations that have sprung up, like the WBT and ALT, because of the new elite level digital events. Is there anything that hasn't been said that you want to say around that we haven't already covered?
Maybe, Sam. As was pointed out, the WBF Investigation Committee, we are very approachable, and we will guarantee anonymity and so on. But in fact, the rule is in our new regulations, it's clearly written that the several federations should do the work if possible. If they have the volunteers and enough data available and so on, they should do the work. Our role in this comes up when a federation fails to do so, then we can take over, we have the right to take over. But I also see a new role for our investigation committee, and that is informing other NBOs how the good examples of other NBOs have been worked out. We see clearly some federations who are doing a great job themselves. They asked for assistance a couple of times and we try to help them, and we help them, I'm sure. But now they are running a great job, and we see this as a best practice example, which we want to share with the other NBOs. In the EBL, we have a bi-yearly conference where most of the NBOs are part of, but we could even imagine that we organize a separate conference for this, telling the others and giving them best practices and examples and so on. Because we see now, and it's no secret, the NBO in Europe who's doing best on this is the EBU, the English Bridge Union. They are really doing a great job. Weekly we get announcements from them that they already have convicted 2, 3, 5 players a week. And this is just to say, on bridge winners, one day Nicholas Hammond said between 5 and 10% is cheating. I was shocked. I thought this is much too much. But if you see the numbers, the EBU comes up now, it's enormous. So there is a case, and it cannot be that only these numbers are this massive in the EBU. So the other federations have to learn from this, and I think we have an important role as WBF and EBL to play here.
Okay. Yep. Anybody else chip in anything at this point? I mean, Boya, given that
Yes.
you know WBT is you know your organisation, or you're in Thomas, and
Yeah, with regards to what, Samantha?
well, just whether there's anything else to add, whether you think, you know, have things, I suppose, from your perspective, have things changed sufficiently enough now, where we are now, for you to hand things over to, you know, the other organisations, the other more established organisations. I think we've all seen the recent letter that came via the WBF from Philip Cronier. And he was talked about a fear of having a two-tier system, of having the traditional organisations and the federations dealing with cheating, and then your organisations like yours or ALT, or you know, having this. He talked about a two-tier system and the potential damage that could perhaps do to the game. I wondered, you know, is this the moment to talk about that?
Well, I would like to see progress first, in a way. I think that both Jan and Eric, they are good guys in my view. I think they really want to do the best, and hopefully they will succeed within the organizations. And my feeling is just that the organizations have been too passive, and I would like to see results before I just say, oh yeah, of course now it will change, it will be good. So this is why when we start, but it's a little bit different also because the organizations haven't really been into digital bridge. Like EBL and the WBF, they haven't really organized much of digital tournaments, and for the time being, at least, what the WBT has done is to organize digital events. So I don't see that as in a way a huge problem. These things, in a way, at least as it has been known, could live in a way side by side. But of course, there could come a situation where the EBL and the WBF will also do more digital tournaments, and the other way around, the WBT would do more live events, where you could have more of this parallel thing that maybe isn't as good if you compare it maybe to other sports, like for example boxing or whatever, where you could see, for example, 2 different world championships and stuff like that, which doesn't seem like a good thing in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. And Steve, do you want to come in?
Whoops. I was just going to say that you know, sort of what Eric was saying before, was the burden of proof is so difficult, and it's so hard to prove cheating. I mean, the USBF case against Hugh Burdens, it took multiple weeks, maybe close to a month, just an absurd amount of hours, as somebody was mentioning, Joan Bennett, in the comments about the hours for cheating. Where the situation where Boyd and WBT or the alt people and stuff like that, they don't have, it's not, it's more as if, okay, you're cheating, we know you're cheating, we're not going to invite you into our house. The WBF can't do that, the ACBL can't do that, but the WBT can, and the alt people can do that, and it's apply for an invitation, and if you don't get an invitation, there's not just that much of a great risk, and it makes it easier to keep a cleaner version of the game because the bar isn't quite so high to prove cheating. And people would say, well, what if you have people that you think cheat that aren't cheating? And I would say, yeah, show me. In my experience, I haven't seen that.
But what I would have liked to see is the bridge organization maybe to move, if possible, to move more in that direction, that they could do more inside the bridge organizations in a way. I feel now that the legal hazard is one of the things that have made them very passive, that they've been afraid of this going into like the normal law system, and because of this we have to be so sure before we can do anything. So, but this seems to be like highly difficult to find a solution to that, and which for us at the WBT and also for these alt and other invitational events seem like a lot easier in a way, that you can kind of, as Steve says here, you can run your own house and decide who to invite. I would have liked to see the main organization go more in that direction, but it might be a very difficult legal question.
I have 4 comments, actually 5. On this one, I think that's it would be great, but it's a dream. At an organization like EBL, we are responsible to our 46 NBO members. Whatever assets we have, it's theirs, which we have to be careful with. And you know, we have certain responsibilities which which a private independent entity does not towards the outside world. Second point, the only way for the organizations like WBF, EBL, etc. to do something is if the accusations of cheating comes to us. If they start outside and then, oh, come on, why doesn't the EBL, WBF do anything? We're very often stuck because of the prejudice which already exists. So, you know, don't expect a case to be first investigated for a couple of weeks on whether bridge winners or whatever, and then expect the WBF to take it over. I don't think that's realistic. Third point, I hate the idea of 2 or more different world organizations. That would really be a defeat, in my opinion. I would hate to have, like in boxing, I don't know, what do they have, 4 different world champions? You know, I can see online bridge, and I think Steve wrote a very interesting piece on bridge winners about this. Online bridge is not inferior to face-to-face bridge, but it's a somewhat of a different game, and we have to have slightly different laws and regulations around it because of the playing environment. It takes slightly different skills. There are some players who are excellent at focusing, actually focus better playing online. Other players really cannot focus as well online as face-to-face. So I could very well imagine that you have an online world champion and a face-to-face traditional world champion. But to have different world championships in the same sport part of the game, I think would be a very, very sad situation. Third, what Eric says about going first to the NBOs, of course, if an event is held by the WBF or any of its zonal organizations, then you don't have to worry about going to the players' NBO. You can go straight. But if it's not a WBF or a zonal event, then the players are individual members of their NBO. So if the NBO has any kind of disciplinary process, report it there first. If that organization doesn't do anything, come to Eric. Fourth, the WBF IC cannot handle all online cheating or all cheating anywhere. And that's why the new disciplinary code specifically says that it refers to top international players only where WBF interferes. We're not going to go into, I mean, you guys know better than I how many thousands of people have been cheating on these casual BBO games over the years. So top players only are the ones where we would take over if an NBO doesn't do anything. Last point, finances. I think, Jordan, with all due respect, any comparisons with professional sports which have huge television incomes, etc., and what they can do in these cases are really nonsensical to me. The total revenues of WBF are in the region of 300,000 euro per year, quite a little bit less maybe EBL. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong. That's the total income, whereas you're comparing us with television sports which have hundreds of millions, if not billions, in income. So we have to, it's unfortunate, but it's a fact. Bridge will never be a huge television sport, at least not in my lifetime, and probably not even in yours, Jordan.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, should we take, it's been quite an intense conversation. Should we take a 5-minute break? We've covered most of the questions. We didn't get specifically to question 5, which is around levels of play and context of cheating. We've certainly touched on the difference a bit between face-to-face and digital, but we haven't talked the difference, I don't think, between kind of elite level players and other levels of sort of bridge club level or other kind of tournament levels rather than the players at the top. And also the sort of contentious question of whether the lockdown climate should have been taken into account when all this happened at the beginning of lockdown. Did that make a difference? And be interested to hear your views. But should we maybe cover some of those when we come back after a break? Think about what final points kind of you want to make before we open it up, and you could be looking perhaps in the chat to see if there's any interesting questions you would like to pick up on. So if we can, Fred, if you're still there, if we can take a tea break for 5 minutes and then we'll come back.
Well, you know what happens with TV programs with commercial breaks. But I'm fine.
I have to check what Sweden is doing in the football against Ukraine.
1-1.
Ah, it is? Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys have no idea what I'm sacrificing to be part of this conference.
It was bad timing for Jan, but good timing for the English.
Yeah.
So how long have they played, Jan?
Just a second.
15 minutes.
Yeah, I see. Okay, they started at 9. Yeah.
Unfortunately, my iPad setup is quite far away from my TV, and I don't have a working Wi-Fi right now, so miserable.
Did you watch Croatia yesterday?
Part of it.
Kind of a silly game.
I hope that Stevie can answer the poker angle. I just see here again on the in the chat. We can learn lessons from online poker, or if it's too different.
Do you follow soccer at all, Steve?
Barely.
We have the European Championship going now.
Yeah, I've seen some highlights. It's exciting.
Yeah. And it's been like the last couple of days have been very good matches.
Yeah.
Very exciting matches yesterday. And now Sweden is playing, so this is difficult for Jan to.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. Like, didn't you check that, Jan, before you signed up for this?
Yeah, you expected me to predict that Sweden would get
I expected to predict
to the next stage. Unfortunately, also it was exactly today. You know, they could have played Sunday or Monday, but it just happened to be today. Didn't know
too much of a safety play to not to be.
Exactly.
There's
I'm not good at safety plays.
There's lots of questions coming in. How do you want to play the last time that we've got? Because we, as I said, we didn't really finish with question 5. I don't know if you want to say a few things around that, and then if there's particular questions that you want to focus on coming in from the chat. How do you want to play this part? And are you willing to go over 5 or 10 minutes, or do you want to?
I'm happy to go over at least.
I mean, we could go over 5 or 10 minutes or so, or, you know.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think dealing with the questions sounds great to me.
Yeah. I also think that's a good
idea. Dealing with questions is the best, you know. The participants are active, and I think we owe them answers whenever we can, so.
Okay, are there particular questions you've seen that you want to pick up on, or do you just want me to pull them out?
We want you to pull them up, Sam.
Thank you.
At least I use the royal we in this case.
I think we have this with this. I see they mentioned this list, but also the EBL. I guess they can't do anything with stuff that happened before the, like, is it November 2020, Jan?
Yes, we cannot do anything to activities outside of our own events before the 28th of November, basically.
Well, basically, if a new case pops up, we are allowed to use all the data.
Sure.
So if now a new case pops up and we decide to investigate, we can use all the data available. But we cannot start a case because of all data before November 28th.
Yeah, but then infractions must have happened after the 28th of November.
I think this is because I just see that they're asking about, like, if you would do anything to, like, that you kind of know that stuff happened, but if you would take action against some of these, I think maybe that's the point to bring up, that you can't do that unless something like new has happened. Like that thing was based on things that happened back in the summer or before the summer.
We would be shut down very quickly.
There's quite a few variations. Sorry,
go ahead, Sam.
There's quite a few variations of the same theme. Some of the questions and the comments coming in are this distinction between, are there gradations of the type of player that cheats? So someone's talked about, you know, maybe very new players should be treated differently from more experienced players, or, you know, or is there a continuum, or is there a difference? I mean, I think, you know, Eric, you were quite clear that the elite players should be setting the example, but does that mean that they should be treated differently in terms of dealing with cheating? And how do you see that? Are there different gradations, and does that affect how they're treated and punished? A few of the questions have come to that sort of effect, so maybe your views on that.
Well, personally, I don't think they have different rules or obligations. That should be the same for everybody. But yes, they can be held to a higher standard. Yes, I really believe so. It's you know, it's not only the exemplary role you play, but it's also, how do I say, being in that position, being a top 10, 100 player of the world, that gives you some obligations. And if you don't handle them rightly, I think that's a different case than compared with a local cheater or whatever. Yeah. And for instance, if you are an administrator, I think you are held to a higher standard too. You are elected in a position, and that gives you a huge responsibility. Santé, Jan.
I fully agree with Eric on that.
Boya, I mean, feel free to come in. I mean, Boya, you've got your hand up, but I mean, there's only a few of you, so just feel free to sort of chip in at this stage.
No, I think some form of cheating. I think some said stuff about this prior in this meeting, but I think some form of cheating, I think most players would understand is just totally wrong. Like if you get the hand records, for example, like if you do online, if you look at all the hands, like these kind of things, I think should be clear to almost all bridge players that these things you cannot do. This is cheating. And the same thing if you play in the club, for example, or you play on real bridge, and you touch your heart when you want a heart lead, or if you touch your ring if you want a diamond lead. These kind of things I think is so clear that it should doesn't matter so much in my view if you have played for long, or if you haven't played that much. These things is basic in my view, that this is cheating. But there are a lot of other stuff in bridge that comes from tempo, that comes from stuff you pick up for your partner, that I think is much harder for the for the beginners or the new players to the game to understand, where the top players understand a lot more about these issues and should definitely be held to a higher standard, and also be punished harder for these kind of transgressions.
And
I totally agree with Boya on that. I think that the top players, the rules apply to everyone, and everyone should be under jurisdiction of the federations and stuff. But certainly, like if Boya or I cheated, I think we should be thrown out for life, and there should be no questions asked, and we should be held to standards that are just ridiculously high, as should be administrators and other top players. And I would even go further and say I would be willing to submit a case. Let's say someone accused me of cheating, Boya thought I cheated. I think it would be reasonable for there to be a jury of my peers, and if some majority, whether you call it 2/3 or preponderance, of however you want to do it, found me guilty of cheating, I would be willing to say, okay, I accept that, and I will never play bridge again. And I'd love to see more people be willing to do that.
Is that workable? I mean, could there not end up being conflicts of interest?
I don't think that, if ideally you would have people that are somewhat retired, like a Fred Gittleman or a Larry Cohn, to be the jury. But I don't think that your competitors are going to find that you cheat if you don't cheat, because I believe in human beings more than that. So I think that if they found me to be cheating, then I cheated. And I don't think they're going to do it because they don't like me, or because they don't like my partnership, or they feel like I win too much or too little, or they don't like the way I wear my hat. I just don't believe that's going to happen. I think it's way too serious, and people will take their job seriously if they were to judge the case.
And Tehana, do you want to think? Because you talked about different kinds of cheating a little bit, etc., in your talk.
I think that more people more dangerous is that people sitting on such a committee would, for personal reasons or other reasons, not convict somebody, that they would convict somebody who does not deserve it. That it's just much more probable. That's how human works. We don't tend to convict and to have them on our soul, the other people. So it will not happen.
And what about the issue of organizational bias? I mean, I think it was you, Eric, that said the EBU have done a great job. They've convicted lots of people, but is there then a bit of pressure on organizations to kind of find people guilty once they've invested a lot of resources and investigation and time? Is there an issue of that at all, a danger?
No, no, I don't think so. EBU is one of the largest NBOs, and they have many online players and tournaments. So it's normal that a certain percentage, and I don't know what that percentage is, but let's say a few percent of the players, if they cheat, then their numbers will be much higher than, for instance, a smaller federation. But you need a lot of volunteers and a good organization to do the job they are doing, and this is why I was talking about example best practices presentations. We don't have to find out every time ourselves how to do it. So we were happy to help them, to assist them, and we have helped other federations too who are still working. And a lot is going on, but it's not public information, and it should not be public information until a conviction or confession is there.
Yeah, Boya, were you coming in on this?
Yeah, I saw there was like a direct question to me from Alex Gibson. He says, Boya, how difficult has it been managing personal bias when considering accepting people to play in WBT? Have you had to refuse entry to close friends? And I think that this question it's very interesting. It's a clear question that you could ask. But I think this is one of the good things that I managed pretty well in 2015 and also now in 2020, 2021, to try and look away from that it's really based on what you see from the hands and not from it. People go, oh, how could you do that? But I think that's when you go into such a role, as you say, as someone called me, like the sheriff, you can't be personal biased in a way. If you are that, they will look through it directly, in my view. So you would have to take sort of a role where you look away from that. It doesn't matter if it's your friends or your enemies or whatever. You try to look at the facts, and of course you try to get a lot of input from other people that know a lot about this, not just, oh, I just feel this is my feeling, I just do something. So I think that's something that we managed very well, but also because we had lots of help from other top players, from statisticians and stuff, that it's easier to base your decision when you have something really solid to base it on. So I think we managed that quite well, even if, of course, it's always difficult to refuse your friends or people you know, because it can get back on you on later in a way. Of course, it's not a nice situation that you talked about when you meet up with people on coming tournaments. Of course, the relationship might be different, but sometimes you have to do the difficult work. Some have to do.
And I mean,
can I answer a direct question from Toine, which is quite about an actual situation, possibly, maybe. He's asking, can the EBL refuse a player in the August qualifier, a non-convicted cheater? And of course, Alex immediately said that this is an oxymoron. You cannot be a non-convicted cheater. You can be a convicted cheater, or you can be a non-convicted suspect, and you can be under investigation. Basically, if you are under a formal investigation by the EPL or WBF, according to the new disciplinary code, you can be suspended during the process. But then that presupposes that there is a formal process ongoing. But if somebody who has just been talked about that, oh, we're sure this guy is cheating, no, we cannot simply, in theory, we can. I mean, in theory, in the statute, it says that the EBL can refuse any player without stating a reason. But we've, over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of consultations about this, and we would never get away with that in real life. So, we're just opening us up for potentially very, very costly lawsuits, which we are almost guaranteed to lose. And entering lawsuits which you are guaranteed to lose, that's a waste of our members' money.
Boya, is your hand up for a new thing or just up from before?
Sorry, I didn't put it down.
And Anne Simons asks, should we be teaching ethical behaviour when we're teaching bridge? Do you think that would make a difference?
Yeah, for me, I would say a full yes. This is part of the rules of the game you want to teach to newcomers. I realize there is a cultural difference all around the world in how you play games. But in fact, we have to start here. And here's a role of the WBF and the other zonal organizations We have to show how the game should be played, and we should not hide. We will not say, we cannot say no cheating in our game because it exists, but this is the way you should play it. And if you play it like this, then you have one of the most beautiful games of the world. If you don't play it like this, you will never ever have the fun you can have. And your peers, they will try to play the game as it should be played, and if you don't, at the end you will be persona non grata, and this will happen automatically. Even if we are not able to convict people who are not behaving like they should, at the end those people will lose. I'm convinced of that, because at the end, if they are elite players, no sponsors will hire them anymore. The colleagues for having fun, going out for dinner and at the bar, they are not happy to do it with you anymore. You have to learn to behave, and we have to start teaching newcomers with that, and then maybe in next generation they know how to play bridge.
Yeah, Tihana?
Yeah, I totally agree. Can't agree more. I also think, as I said in my presentation, that we should remind players before the tournaments, before some events, festivals, that we expect them to behave as honest human beings, and that they are, because they want to be. Anyone wants to be, everyone wants to be honorable human being. And the other thing is that I doubt that for many cheating happens overnight. You know, it's a process that starts, and then you cheat a bit from time to time. Then I don't know exactly, but I really doubt that it happens like that. Today I'm a completely decent person, and tomorrow I'm a cheater. And I think that in these little communities of ours, in our clubs and federations, our federation has a few hundred people, that we can see when this process begins, and that we can stop it before it really explodes on individual level. I really think that this could be possible, and that it's a good approach to try to stop.
And also, I think our organizations have to play an important role here. Not about only cheating, but behavior at the table is such a thing that, I mean, newcomers, sometimes they get scared at the bridge table on local clubs to international tournaments. I remember Jan at the European Championships in Italy a couple of years ago. You were the chairman. Montecatini. You were the chairman of the championship committee, and your opening speech was, "We will have zero tolerance to unethical behavior and any unwanted behavior at all." And we had some convictions there. People who called the director. The director said, "Well, we had this rule, so you get punished." And it helps for a tournament. It becomes more friendly if people know I should behave like this at the table.
Yeah, and we've got quite a difficult question, I think, from Tim Rees in terms of reducing cheating. What level of proof should be required? And do you want to root out as many cheats as possible with the possibility of convicting a few innocents?
Opinions on this are going to differ.
I must admit, that's one thing I found quite surprising about tonight, is that you've all, generally speaking, you've been more kind of similar kinds of views than I actually thought you were going to be slightly more polarized on some issues. So you've disappointed me. I thought there's going to be more fisticuffs.
Sam, we will disappoint you many more times in your life. No, but let's be serious. I made a comparison with the normal justice system 1 hour and a half ago. And we all accept that in that system, some innocent people are in jail. It happens, and it's not fair, and it's terrible if it happens to you. But all in all, we accept that this can happen in the system. For bridge, it seems that some people cannot accept this at all. And that makes it rather impossible to prove cheating. At the end, you will always lose at a court case with judges who don't know anything about bridge, or even if they know about bridge. Look what happened to Antonio Nunez at CAS. I mean, it was such a clear-cut case, and still you can lose such a one. If the threshold is too high, we will never be successful. So we should discuss, and maybe in the laws of bridge, change the fact that you say, okay, listen, if a group of peers or percentages for that or statistics from that or whatever shows you are probably a cheater, you are a cheater. And maybe for the first time only the punishment will be for a shorter time, you get another chance, but 2 or 3 times in a row, it cannot happen. It cannot happen that you beat algorithms of a computer all the time. It's impossible. Bridge is a game of chances, and you cannot take all the right decisions. And if this happens, and you were that once in a century talent that was that good, okay, sorry for that. You know, this one way or the other, we have to find a way to settle a workable standard.
And another question here from Shireen Mohandis. What is the statute of limitations on cheating?
I'm sure Eldon.
I think that's different in different organizations. I'm not sure that there is any universal standard for this. I remember in the WBF and or EBL, this discussion came up. I believe it's one of the things that we changed in the old disciplinary code. Somebody, and I'm not going to mention names, had, I think, if something was not reported within, I think it was 3 months or something like that, then it couldn't be, you know, you had to forget about it. And then we were several people who said, and this happened, I think, during 2019, that it's impossible, because most bridge cheating cases, we were talking about live in that case, are going to take much longer. I mean, look at the 2014 cases. It took quite a long time to be able to prove that something untoward happened. So I believe, and now I'm not sure that I'm right, we can check that on the records, but I believe now it's within 2 years. It's not a formal statute of limitations, maybe, but I believe, actually, I believe that a case can be taken up later, but it's not automatic. And also, cases can be, a prosecution can be started by the WBF itself, even if there has not been a formal allegation from any other entity. But I'm not 100% sure about this now, without looking at the statutes or at the disciplinary code.
Okay, Alex Gibson is obviously on a roll tonight with his difficult questions. Do you feel comfortable with how analytics are used in the process of finding cheating? And with no disrespect to Nicholas Hammond, which probably means he is about to disrespect him, of course, is it good that the expertise approach appears to come from one source?
I can take a crack at it.
Go for it.
Okay. I think analytics are very important. I think that outliers really give you a lot of information. It doesn't come from one source. There's Jonathan Cook does analytics and statistics, as do some other people. Nicholas is certainly the most well-known of the people that supply that. But I think that analytics have their place, and at some point we might get to a place where statistics alone can convict people for cheating, but we're certainly not there right now. And what they can do is really help us identify these outliers for humans and experts to look over the bridge hands of these people to see if there is a case.
And I mean, Nicholas, if you're still with us, perhaps you could type a response to that too. Someone, Diana Lax, asked, do you consider intimidation cheating?
I think it's horrible, and that's one of the things actually that I address specifically in Montecatini in my speech. It infuriates me, and whether we call it cheating or not, I really don't. Well, I should care. It infuriates me when top players, world-class players, sit at the table and deliberately intimidate much weaker players they play against. I'm not going to again mention names, but we had a case where one team was completely destroyed by totally unacceptable table manners by one of the world's top players. It's very few things make me more angry than that, when the big guys take advantage of the little guys.
Or even just don't show any respect. You arrive at the table, you don't say hi or whatever, you are discussing with your partner or whatever, just neglecting your opponents. This is not the way it should be done.
Is that not just called being in the bridge bubble?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, for some, yes. But for some, it's very, very deliberate.
And Dave asks, what can the non-elite bridge player do to help with the cheating problem?
I think actually non-elite players have done a lot. I think what happened back in 2015, especially, where so many helped, like there was a big community helping with helping, and I know that the Fantoni Nunes case, for example, that started with a Dutch woman that wasn't a top player that found these methods that they used with the way they stack their cards. So I think that non-elite players can help a lot by just doing what they can. If they see something, if they hear something, that they can try and just help out as best they can.
Okay, and I mean, Alan Mayo's question, I think, gets to quite a lot of what the panel's been discussing. So what exactly is the definition of cheating? Does it include unethical behaviour in the face-to-face game, taking advantage of hesitations, not disclosing agreements? Do we need a grading system for types of cheating on the spectrum? Are we all agreed with what cheating is?
It's difficult to define cheating, but I know it when I see it. That was a famous judge in the US that said that same about porn. And it's difficult to define. But yes, it is cheating if you behave unethically on purpose, or you want to make misuse of inexperience of players or whatever. It is cheating. Cheating is taking actions against the spirit of the game. That should be cheating.
If you try to get an edge by doing something illegal, you are cheating. But of course, some cheating is worse for sure, and some cheating has a much more major effect than other kind of cheating. And it could also be, I think, a language thing. I think in some languages, I would say that, well, for me as a Norwegian, I would call it all of these things I would call cheating in a way. But I know with myself that some form of these cheating are much worse and should, of course, be punished much harder.
Yeah, and thanks, Steve, for putting into the chat. Is collusive cheating worse than self-kibitzing?
Well, in a way, yes, because you need two people. Can you imagine how that starts? Who is the one who starts to propose to his or her partner? Let's become cheaters. I mean, I cannot imagine that everybody should be so scared to such a proposal. It could mean the end of your partnership. I mean, collusive cheating is in that way worse.
Does all the panel agree with that?
Well, I think it's like in the rest of society. You know, you have all kinds of crimes coming from murder to whatever other grades you have, going all the way down to misdemeanors. And I don't see why it should be different in bridge. I mean, as both Boye and Eric seem to say. I mean, collusive cheating, it takes preparation, organization, preconceived systems, etc., etc. That's, in my opinion, probably the worst form of cheating. Knowing the hand records, of course, is also cheating. Then it depends on how you use that info or not. But yes, I think in general, if you want one definition of cheating, regardless of degree, is deliberately making use of unauthorized information. And then you can have all the grades of that.
But in fact, I think it's a white-black situation. You are a non-cheater, then you won't think about any possible cheatings, whatever. But if you make the first small step, like a person, I'm not a psychologist, but I think then it would be easier to take next steps too, and to from bad to worse. I know many people who wouldn't even think about cheating. It's impossible in their for their attitude.
DNA.
Johanna, do you want to come in there?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think that still many would not cross the line of collusive cheating. They would cheat on various way at the table using hesitation, slow play, whatever, but they would not cross that line. I think collusive cheating is really something different.
Boya, I think I've heard you talk about this issue before. Do you have the same perspective here?
The problem for me is a little bit, I feel that cheating is cheating in a way. So it's hard for me to say, okay, collusive cheating is so much worse, because I see a little bit the effect that it has. I would say that if you cheat by looking at the hand records, like with self-kibitzing, to me that has an even bigger effect in many ways to the game. If you know the hand record, you can more or less win every hand or every tournament you play. But if you collusively cheat, of course that gives you an edge, but not the same kind of edge, in my view, as it does with some of the things you can do if you look at all the hands. So I feel that some of this cheating you can do by yourself is if not as bad, at least very, very close to as bad as collusive cheating, because it really destroys the game, and that's the problem.
Okay.
I mostly agree with Boya. I would just say that, you know, the self-kibitzer ruins, in a sense, the game more because they have complete information, and the collusive cheater is not going to be able to cheat as much. But the reason, the way I look at it is, I found it where I could forgive, to some degree, the self-kibitzer when they've confessed. Like Michael Novoselsky, I've certainly been able to forgive. I've never been able to forgive a collusive cheater. So by my own standards, in my head, collusive cheating is worse.
And do you think lockdown made a difference? The fact that a lot of this happened when lockdown just started and we were in this strange new world? Does anybody give allowances for that?
I don't.
No. I think someone wrote, I think it was even on Bridge Winners that I read this, that it more that COVID maybe more of revealed the personality, or revealed like the tendency to cheat. So rather than so it's rather than created it.
Okay, I mean, I'm conscious of time, but I mean, this has been a fascinating discussion. What I might propose, in fact, I've got one more question from the chat that I think is slightly different, where I'll ask you. Then maybe I'll start with Jordan and Tihana to have a psychologist and a sociologist wrap up of what you think is a key thing that's come out of this for you and for the academic work that you're doing in this field. And then maybe I will go to the rest of each of you to have a sort of final summing up point. And also, I think at this stage, just to say a huge thank you to everyone putting in comments and questions. Apologies if we haven't got to all the questions. As I say, we will compile a report, and we do have a Padlet. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Padlets. It's like an online It's like an online comments board, and it's anonymous. So you can, all you have to do is click on that link, and you can just put comments in, and it's all anonymous. And again, if you haven't had a chance to say what you think, or you want to make a comment anonymously, then do please use that. And Robert Gordon and Nicholas Hammond, thank you to both of you. I mean, you've got lots of expertise, and both of you have been putting in a lot of comments and really kind of pushing the debate from the audience and participants' perspective. And we have one question here from Hettel, who says, if an MBO, I think from a Cyprus Bridge Union perhaps, if an MBO does not have the resources to conclude investigations at the rate that suspicious players arrive, how reluctant should they be to suspend players pending the ability to properly investigate them? There's a question of limited resources of NBOs and how it, I mean, like we've talked about the EBU, but it's a slightly bigger organisation than perhaps some of the other organisations. So do any of you have a view of that?
Yeah, if I may, as I think I mentioned before, the WBF, they can ask the WBF to take the case, to investigate. However, the WBF will only do it if it concerns a certain level of player.
And
so
having said that,
from what kind of level? What's the break-off point?
If I remember correctly, what we put in the code as a definition, lacking anything better, anybody who is registered with a code in the WBF, meaning anybody who has ever participated.
No, the last 5 years.
Wasn't that what we put, Eric?
No, the last 5 years. They have been.
Was it the last 5 years?
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
But to answer the question, if it's not concerning a player WBF would be happy to look at, I think they should be very reluctant in suspending a player without an investigation. It's as an official sports organization, you have to be very reluctant. I mean, you're innocent until proven to a certain extent you are guilty, and if you don't have the capacity at all to have a look at it, then it could become a nightmare. If some players would say this player is cheating, and you say, okay, I'm going to suspend this. This is non-acceptable.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So should we just do a roundup with all of you? So starting perhaps Jordan with you as a sociologist, as the only non-bridge player here. So you have to excuse him sometimes for some, like when he referred to digital bridge being new, I think he was really referring to elite level digital bridge being relatively new in terms of what happened at the start of lockdown. So Jordan, as an outsider to all of this, what are your thoughts? You're muted. We haven't had too much of that, so well done, well done.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the panel for your thoughts and contributions. It was fascinating hearing the discussions. It was just really intriguing just to listen in on them and to be able to offer some discussion too. I think for me, what's came out of the discussions, the first point is in relation to a question that I had in how do we balance laws of the game, which are relatively stable, they're written, in comparison to the game, which is very fluid and unpredictable. And so this kind of tension that we have always persists. And I think it's showing, especially intensifying now in relation to online bridge at COVID. Secondly, another key kind of theme that's came out of the discussion is this notion of discipline and punish, and how do we discipline and punish for different types of cheating that has occurred, whether that's in face-to-face or in online bridge. And then finally, just a signpost to some of the work that we're doing at BAMSA. One paper that we're looking at is in relation to the pre-recording of confessions and how they have been used in the past. So confession has been used in the 2nd and 4th centuries in Christian theology. It's a very interesting concept, and how it can be understood in relation to bridge is something that we're interested in. And then finally, the second paper that we're interested in is the organizational responses to incidents of cheating, and how then that has been interpreted within the laws and the spirit of the game. So thank you very much again to all of the panel and everyone who came along to the session this evening.
Thanks, Jordan. Does anyone want to attempt to reply to Jordan?
Jordan's
Okay.
too smart. I'm scared.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting if both Tehana and Jordan are going to have papers coming out, I guess, on this topic. So it'd be great to get your views on them. So yeah, we can increase this dialogue hopefully in the future.
Yeah, I have one thing there, Samantha, when it comes to confessions. I think it makes it a lot easier to go forward when people in your community, when they confess. I must say I have very little problem with moving forward with people that has confessed, okay, I did something bad here regarding cheating in the past. But the problem is when you have this, that it's like it's a situation that it doesn't get resolved. It's just there and it's an aching situation. That I think is very troublesome. So I think that if we had more confessions, I think it would have been easier for many of us to move forward.
And do any of you think that anybody has been accused who is innocent?
No.
Who was that?
Stevie.
Ah, I guess so.
Okay, so
I have
Tehana?
no idea because I don't know exactly who has been accused, and I have no way of answering that either yes or no. Sorry.
Well, when you say accused, I mean, yeah, you know, if I'm sitting here having a conversation on the phone, that's totally different. But I don't think that organizations have accused or publicly on Bridgewarners people have been accused that have been innocent. I certainly think that there's accusations against people that are innocent, but I've yet to see an organization convict somebody that I thought was innocent.
Yeah, that's, yeah, convictions, yes.
And Tehana, as a psychologist, have you got some final concluding thoughts?
Thank you. Not really. I would just like to thank you all. It was for me. It was really nice discussion. I'm glad, as unlike Sam, I'm glad that we can that we share most of the opinions, and that this panel was quite similar to regular discussions with my friends. And somehow, the one thing that I would like to point out that, let's say, stayed with me and that I find really important is this teaching moral values at bridge classes and just to incorporate this moral domain in our everyday bridge. So that's it, and I really thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Which order do we want to go in? The final thoughts. So we'll go Eric, Jan, Boya, Steve, just because that's where you are on my screen. So there you go. Eric first. Final concluding thoughts.
Okay, 2 points. First of all, I really look forward to face-to-face bridge again. So we don't have self-killing anymore in that respect. But second point is I want to comment on just the innocent or guilty discussion just a few minutes before. We have seen, and also in the letter of Philippe Cronier he sent, he made a good point saying that GDPR rules forbid us and the organizations to use connection data. I just want to stress that at that time, BBO was very willing to share this connection data. And I personally have seen some connection data for people who are not convicted, who did not confess. But if that data would have been public available, then I think there would be a good chance that they would have been convicted. So it's not fair from both sides to say, listen, we know we have the famous top 30, they're all guilty and they should be punished. But it's not fair the other way around too, saying, that connection data, but you're not allowed to use it. At that time, the connection data was there and it was available. And that maybe brings in a little bit understanding for how people at that time were looking at this data. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Jan?
If I have to focus on one point for the future,
yes.
It is, I really don't want to see two parallel world championships of the same meaning, two online ones or two face-to-face ones. I don't want to see two different international bridge organizations. I really beg of, I mean, although I won a bridge tournament today, miracle. And of course, I'm not at the level of you, Boya, and you, Stevie. So I beg of you, talk among your community, try to get some agreement to join forces. I mean, you know, Eric can use all the help that he can get in investigating and prosecuting alleged cheaters. So, you know, instead of doing our separate things, let's all try to work together and in one way which also can be seen by the doubters and the outside world as being due process for everybody. Thank you very much. And Sam and Miriam and everybody who has been putting together this conference, I think it's an incredible work you've been doing. I think, as I told, I think Janari Gorona, this is probably the most substantial and all-encompassing conference on these matters ever held, as far as I know, and you deserve a lot of credit. Thanks.
Thank you. Boya?
I think the main thing for me has been, like, the whole thing that I've been involved in is to try and to get the whole kind of bridge community, the whole bridge family behind this, like, say no to cheating, and also with the thing with how we approach the game, how we play the game, that we don't, like, try and avoid the gray zones, that the game, there's so many gray zones in the game, but to try and avoid it and to try to bring the whole bridge community behind this, not just certain countries or certain players, but that we all go in this together and try to play the game right. I think that would be a great thing for bridge, and I think it will be also a great thing for all the players, that they will feel that the game is even better than they have experienced up to this point. So I think that's the big thing for me, to try and build the bridge culture. And I think also the organization should focus a lot on that, to build the right bridge culture for the future. And thanks a lot for setting up this, Samantha, and all your helpers, and for all of the people watching. And yeah, thanks a lot for allowing me to be part of this.
It's great. And no pressure, Steve, but the final word's going to you. So.
Well, thank you, Samantha. I think this is great, and thanks everybody on the panel. And just to take the optimistic view and maybe pie in the sky a little bit, is that there really isn't that much cheating, and there was more cheating before, live and online. It's gotten reduced a lot, and just to ask people, just to say, hey, enjoy this great game and challenge yourself and solve the puzzles, and if you're not there, get better at it, and go in there and just beat boys' brains in the next time you play them, but just do it ethically and keep it up and get the most out of it, and teach your kids and teach your grandkids and keep on playing and just do it the right way and the way it's meant to be played. Thanks.
Yeah. I just have one final poll, just to return to Jordan's question. So if you could just all vote, is bridge an individual personal trouble or a public collective issue? Have you changed your mind given what you've heard? Is it personal, is it collective, or is it both? So is it an individual problem? Is it a public problem that requires a more collective kind of solution? Or is it a personal trouble that an individual solves by themselves? Or is it both? If you could vote, that would be great. Excellent. Thanks very much. I would just like to say a huge thank you. I mean, we have run over time. Tehana predicted that we would, because we had such a great panelist of speakers, and there's so many interesting questions and so many issues coming out, and we really do appreciate all of you for putting in, 2.5 hours today. Fantastic, thank you. Just to say, there's more tomorrow. We even have more. We have more from Yen Cameras tomorrow. And I do predict better. I'm going to be a better predictor tomorrow that the sexism discussion will be more contentious than I was I was wrong in my prediction tonight that I thought it might get a bit heated at times, but I do think tomorrow might get more heated when we discuss the thorny issue of women's bridge and sexism and what should be done about it. But first up, earlier than that, 10 a.m. in the UK, but maybe a bit too early for some of you in the States, but hopefully we can incorporate some of our other partners in Australia and other parts of Asia and around the world. So up at 10 o'clock in the morning in the UK time for looking at age and generation and intergenerational relationships. And then the final day of our conference focuses on learning, education, development in bridge, also looking at the issue of marketing bridge, and the final conference roundup. So we're halfway. So we've done 5 out of 10 sessions. We have 5 more sessions to go, and we have a taster session mini bridge tomorrow night. So huge thanks to all of you. We really do appreciate it. And yeah, a great session. So thanks very much. And yeah, thanks to my team. This is only possible because of people like Jordan and Miriam and Christina and Zoe and everyone on the BAMSA team, and all our BAMSA collaborators and supporters and everybody in the audience. So this is truly a global bridge community effort. So thanks to everyone.